Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Drapers Connects. My name is Graham Moran and I am the Associate Editor here at Drapers. For those of you who have not joined us before, Drapers Connects is our series of digital events and virtual content that aims to connect the industry via Q&A discussions, panel talks, and live webinars such as this. So thank you all for joining us. And if you are watching live, please feel free to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A function, and we'll do our best to cover them and answer them as we go. So today, in partnership with Oracle NetSuite, we will be exploring the topic of growth in challenging times and how to achieve agility, efficiency, and effectiveness as a way to future-proof your business. I'm very happy to welcome today's panel. We have Luke Hodgson, who is the Chief Technology Officer at luxury streetwear brand Represent. Thank you, Luke. We have Vlad Sgaverdea, who is the ERP Project Manager at lifestyle retailer Oliver Bonas. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Graham. Hi, everyone.
And we have Kath Brammold, who is the Industry Solutions Advisor for Retail and Wholesale at Oracle NetSuite.
Hi, Graham.
Hello, thank you to our panel. So to kick us off, Kath is going to give us an introduction to Oracle NetSuite. So over to you.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you today. So my name is Kath Brammold from Oracle NetSuite. I think most of you probably have heard of NetSuite. NetSuite is the ERP system of choice for smaller and rapidly growing retailers. So we work with many apparel and accessory brands. Represent and Oliver Bonas both are NetSuite users, and yeah, I spend a lot of my life talking to retailers just like you.
Perfect, thank you very much. So not to start on a negative note, but there is no denying that we are living and working in turbulent times. There's the unstable economy, cost of living crisis, supply chain headaches, as well as many other pressures and challenges, like the need to be operating more sustainably, and a number of other headaches that are affecting businesses across the fashion and retail industry. So I wanted to start, if maybe the panel could share, what are some of your biggest challenges at the moment? And importantly, how are you tackling them? What tactics do you have to get through these difficult times? Vlad, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, one of our biggest challenges at the moment is the planning and budgeting, as we have 81 stores open and we plan to open 90 stores, to have 90 stores open by the end of this year. And this, as you imagine, takes a lot of planning and budgeting, a lot of data to analyze and to check. And we are looking together with NetSuite to bring more automated processes and to analyze live data. That's our first tackle in our processes.
Great, I guess that's yeah, it's a difficult time at the moment to be dealing with stores and online, etc. So thank you for sharing. Luke, what about you and your experience at Represent?
Yeah, I suppose it's worth flagging that Represent has been going through some really rapid growth over recent years. We've been around for a little while, but at the advent of the lockdowns, it really stimulated a huge drive towards our type of product, and we've really nailed it in terms of finding that product market fit. So we're growing like 80% plus year on year, and we've got 9-figure turnover firmly in our sights in the near future. So it gives you a sense of just quite how quickly things are growing, and supplying that demand whilst producing consistent high quality products is probably the single biggest challenge in a brand like ours. How do you resolve that? Well, it is a consistent challenge and there isn't one solution to it, but you have to ensure that your business is geared around brand and product first. Like, we're a new luxury brand. It's about really, really high quality product consistently dropping every week, restocking every week, or something really new to talk about. So actually what you've got to do is you've got to gear your business up with product and brand right at the forefront of it. And then everything else is really there to enable it. So it's about accepting that it's a really good pressure to have that kind of growth trajectory, a really good pressure to be consistently launching something new. And then it's about making sure that everything else is geared up to supporting that. So whilst I know the question more is inferred as to how do you go through challenging times, I think for us, we're in a real sweet spot and we want to keep that going. So actually our resilience is about continuing to do the things that we do well. And if anything, we should be insulated from the wider macroeconomic climate by doing those things well.
Great, thank you. Kath, what are you seeing across the industry with all the different businesses that you work with? What are some of the challenges that maybe we haven't discussed that you're seeing?
So I think we tend to be working with sort of smaller and growing brands. There's obviously was a huge shift online during the COVID pandemic. I think there has been a swing back to the high street, but you are still seeing more people shopping online and staying online because people were forced to move online. And I think a lot of people have stayed there. So that is an interesting and I think probably permanent shift. So for retailers who perhaps historically had treated the stores as more the primary channel and the online as a secondary channel, I think it has been for some of those retailers some challenge to align the channels and treat online as being just as important as the stores. And that I'm talking there more about the kind of more traditional high street retailers rather than digitally native brands. A lot of the retailers I'm talking to are still really struggling with container pricing, coming particularly from China. You know, I mean, the prices have really dropped recently, but they're still way higher than they were pre-COVID. So a lot of the companies I'm talking about are really seriously now thinking about nearshoring and onshoring as not just because of the costs, but also because of some of the geopolitical uncertainties that are taking place around China in particular. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that over the course of the next year, I think. And also sustainability is part of that. I saw some interesting research last year that said, you know, people would pay more for sustainable products. And all the retailers I talked to kind of say, I don't think that's actually true. I think that was more pre the economic situation, but it certainly plays a part. And if people have got a choice between a more sustainable product and a less one, they'll probably choose the more sustainable one. So I think we're going to see a lot of people putting sustainability higher on the agenda, not as a differentiator, but just because, you know, people do care. And I think, you know, those two things are kind of a little bit interlinked. So it's quite interesting. You know, on the one hand, we've got cost, on the other, we've got brand and differentiation. And it's always a marrying act between the two, isn't it, really?
Thank you. So when we talk about growth and expansion, both businesses have talked already about the growth that they're hoping to see this year. But before you can get to that growth, it's very important that the kind of foundations of your business are strong and that you've kind of perfected the basics in order to build on top of that. I wanted to ask the panel's opinion on maybe what are some of the most important or effective basics to perfect within your business. Maybe something that might be a little unexpected or something that our audience might not necessarily think about being something that if once you get it right, it really kind of sets the business off on a course for success. Luke, you're nodding, why don't we go to you?
No, I suppose there's kind of two elements to the answer then that I'll give you is there's more like a methodology that you can adopt and a way of thinking about challenges in your business that I've found to be really, really effective and has started to see real results inside of Represent. And it's this concept of like the operator experience. So if you think about traditional retail, particularly in online, there's a big emphasis on customer experience and that like frictionless flow from the customer discovering you to their checking out the first time, receiving goods, returning. And there's a huge emphasis, and rightly so, on how do we reduce friction and create this amazing customer experience. for as long as I've been in retail, there's been much less emphasis on what the operator experience is behind delivering that level of quality experience to the customer. So it's like, what are the day-to-day processes and operational processes that have to happen inside of a business to be able to deliver that amazing customer experience? And I think actually emphasizing inside of a business how important it is that you model out your end-to-end processes, really visualize them and understand all of the different links in the chain that support the business, and then start to surface where there are inefficiencies. So as a methodology, that idea of focusing on operator experience, for most brands, it's really long overdue. Is if you ask multiple people in the brand how a process works, they'll probably tell you slightly different answers, which means no one actually knows. So find out what your operational processes are is probably the simplest thing you can do. And then I suppose an example that we've found that's really helped is really going deep on what the product process is, from conception through to development of samples, through to, okay, we're green lighting this for production, through to, okay, how do we then distribute the product information across all of our different systems? So SKUs match up, barcodes match up, the data is all linked between the different systems. That has a huge, huge impact to a business, because it ultimately means that your data is shared and is like reliable across all of the systems, but also you find really innovative ways of creating efficiencies, whether it be in who is focused on which area in that process end to end, and how you can replace manual processes in things like spreadsheets and CSV uploads with automated tools that will do that work for you. That's probably the sort of quickest win in apparel and fashion brands that I've found.
I love that, the idea of flipping the customer experience on the other side. Like, if you want the external to be smooth and frictionless, so internally it has to work just as well.
Yeah, if you don't do it, you are going to throw headcount at it. Do you know what I mean? Like, nailing your operator experience, understanding what the processes are and how you can make them more efficient through process changes or technology or both. It's ultimately future-proofing your business, because you're not throwing people at problems that could be automated. But it does take time and effort, and that time and effort needs to be focused for long enough to be able to get the good stuff out the other side.
Vlad, what about you?
Yeah, I guess Luke here covered everything. And I would say, yeah, perfecting processes is a big area for each business now. And as I love to say about us, we are going into a business transformation now, and researching the key departments into your business play an important role for you to bring the business to next level.
Yeah. Great. Kath, in your experience?
I would absolutely agree with what both Luke and Vlad have said. You know, the processes for every company is very similar, right? It's design, buy, move and sell. But that makes it obviously that's kind of what you learn when you do, you know, retail 101 at university or something, isn't it? But actually the reality of that, it's all about people. And, you know, I like to always look at the business processes, and I think the interesting place to look is really the touch off points between one department of people and another one, because that's usually where the problems can happen. So it's really not just, I mean, Luke mentioned already removing the manual pieces, but I like to look at the transition between groups of people, because that's often where things can go a little bit wrong. And also maybe, you know, just in terms of thinking about what exceptions could happen before they happen, and actually having a plan B already agreed between groups of people, I think is a really smart move, because then when it does happen, you're not running around in panic mode, that you actually already know how you're going to respond. So what would happen if this was delayed? What would happen if we couldn't do the photography then? I mean, there's so many different elements to that, but I do think it's always really, particularly in a very fast moving environment, really helpful to have that. And I'd finish really by just saying, you know what your KPIs are. How are you going to actually measure success? Make sure you've got the relevant data for the right people, so that everybody knows they're moving in the right direction.
Great advice, thank you. So when it comes to achieving growth, business growth, we as a panel kind of came up with these 3 key words, which were agility, efficiency, and effectiveness. And I find people talk a lot about, big buzzy words like this. But I wanted to start off by asking what does agility mean when it comes to a business? You can be an agile person, but as a big business with lots and lots of moving parts, what does agility mean to you in reality? And if our panel has any advice for bringing agility into a business. Luke, why don't we start with you?
The obvious question is, the obvious answer is people. Bring people with the right mindset. If you've got two people and one is stuck in their ways and one is really bang up for a challenge, the one who's bang up for a challenge is the prototype that you want to then multiply across your business, right? That's the one you want. I suppose on a more practical level, if I think about Represent, like agility for us is like, I mentioned it at the top, but we never miss a week. Like it's cultural inside of our business that every single week there's something dropping, there's something restocking, or we have an announcement or an event that's happening. And when we talk about like, okay, how does that help breed agility in a business? You kind of have two strands to it. You've got a really carefully planned out commercial calendar that's forward looking at what is dropping in week 42, week 43, week 44, what's restocking in those weeks. But what it also enables you to do when you're on that kind of cadence of week by week is it also builds in the ability for you to seize opportunities in a more reactive way. So it's about creating a business model and an operating model that supports that. So from the supply chain through to your tech and operational processes, there needs to be always some allowance and some slack available for you to be able to spin something up that wasn't carefully planned out 6 months before. So in terms of what does it mean to be agile, that's an example of what I would mean when we talk about agility inside of Represent.
Great, thank you, Luke. I like that we spoke about it in prep for this, the idea of it, that week to week thing really driving you. And I guess when you get into that rhythm, that makes you act and respond quickly because it's only a week and the next one's coming so quickly.
You ain't got a choice. And that's great, right? Like the business has been working on that cadence for such a long time that it is a rule. You come in, that's how we work. And when those things are like non-negotiables, it does stimulate a whole different type of innovation inside of a business that wouldn't happen if that cadence wasn't there. So like to the founders and the leaders of the business, that's a massive sort of thing that they've nailed. And I haven't seen it to this kind of level before, which is, I think, one of the keys of the success of the brand.
Yeah, definitely. Vlad, for Oliver Bonas, obviously, I believe the business is turning 30 this year. Like that's it's not necessarily this new company that can sort of make its processes up from the ground now. And obviously, as you touched on, you have over 80 stores, you have this kind of big footprint. How can a business of that scale be agile?
I think this comes with experience, and for us, adaptability is the key to be agile in our business. As we have many stores open in different areas in UK, we look to have enough personnel in each store, and we like to follow the trends of each area. If you go in a store in Harrogate or Chichester, you'll see that is different from a store in London. So that comes with our way to see the things and to be close to the people in the specific area. And also we need to be able to make changes when something is not working. We are fast and we react to any changes. In the past, it happened that we had to relocate a different store in a different address, street, or area just to perform better.
Yeah. I guess one thing that came up when we were preparing for this is you can be agile, you can try lots of things, cut lots of things when they aren't working, back them when they are, but that sometimes involves quite a lot of risk. You have to maybe make a quite quick decision to go for something and to back something or to put it in the opposite direction. Do you guys have any advice in terms of that, the agility, the adaptability, but also kind of making a decisive decision and taking a risk at the same time?
I mean, from my experience inside of Represent, you've got two co-founders in George and Mike, and then you've got a leadership containing Spenny, James, and Steph. There is this incredible mix of experiences and perspectives. The result is really, really good instincts. And actually a lot of success in like luxury fashion brands, very, very fast growing, high growth trajectory brands. A lot of what is calculated risk is data backed and data supported, but there is a gut instinct. And actually the strength of a brand and the strength of a business is often being able to support and get behind those instincts when something just feels right. So I know everyone is looking for the formula for success, but actually I think some of it comes down to that basic gut feel that's built up over years and years and years of taking those risks and getting more right than wrong.
Anyone else have anything to add on taking risks?
Yeah, I would say in organization like ours, the structure is the key to efficiency. You know, if you have a good organization structure in place, then you are allowed to feedback and to action on any challenges and risks that may occur. And I'm really pleased to see the collaboration with our senior management team. You know, they are really good listeners. They get the feedback from each head of the department, they assess, and together we get the good decisions for any departments and keys in the business. So that comes in place when you have strong mindsets and people to lead to a decision.
Definitely. You touched on Vlad, a point I was going to move on to, which is we've talked about agility. So the next one I was going to cover was this efficiency, and especially in newer businesses or established businesses, there's always going to be ways you can find efficiencies. We've touched on some of them, but I wondered if you have any advice or examples to share about finding efficiencies and just kind of making the business or people or processes smoother, because that's how you know, what this idea of growth that we keep talking about, that's, you need to be efficient to find that growth. Luke, do you have any, from your experiences, how you've brought efficiencies into the business?
Yeah, and I risk sounding like a stuck record here, but it all comes back to that methodology of an operator experience. You find inefficiencies by surfacing them through modeling out processes end to end. Once you surface those inefficiencies, you resolve them either through process changes or technology changes. And if you do that over the compound effect over a period of time is really transformational in a business, but you just have to stick at it and continually do it. So yeah, again, stuck record, operator experience, modeling out your processes, breaking, as Kath said before, breaking down those like silos that exist where a process goes through one team and then is like a rugby ball passed to the next team. Don't separate those processes, bring them together and map them out and talk through them with all of the stakeholders involved in those end-to-end processes. And you'll be amazed, like my position as like a tech leader inside of the business, a lot of the answers will come from the team as long as you're facilitating the discussion and the discovery and the documentation of the end-to-end processes. The efficiency gains and how you capture them will come many times from the team rather than through some visionary person in front of a laptop working miracles. It's normally just by following process and doing the hard yards, right? Mapping stuff out, reviewing things regularly.
Yeah. Kath, you're nodding a lot. I wonder if you have anything to add.
I mean, I think it's absolutely true. And I think sometimes also, you know, not every business at the moment is growing. And I think it also can be, you know, in terms of efficiencies, sometimes people just think, right, I need to cut costs. I'll just cut equally across the board. And obviously that's not the right thing to do. It's really about being really smart. So efficiency is not just about the good times. It's also about the more difficult times. And, you know, it's really thinking about what is the core essence of the brand. So, you know, if quality and product is your core essence, do not do anything to ever touch that. You need to find efficiencies in other places. So it really is all around looking for the places to make efficiencies and being, really smart about what those are. Don't cut brand, don't change or do anything to damage your brand. I was on an interesting round circle a few weeks ago, and we were talking about the dangers of discounting, that once you get into that discounting cycle, your customers come to expect it, and then they don't buy full price because they know you're going to discount eventually. So it can seem like a great efficiency as a way of pushing product out and getting some sales, but actually in the long run it could actually be detrimental to your brand's certainly image, if not survival. So I'm a great believer in looking for efficiencies in the right place, not just across the board.
Thank you. To our audience who are watching live, don't forget that if you have any questions for our panel, to get them in. Hopefully we'll get to them towards the end of the conversation. So do use that Q&A function if you have any questions you'd like to ask. So my next question, to kind of sum up what we've been discussing, I guess, is we're talking about this agility, the efficiency, the effectiveness. Really, I think what that comes down to is what we call kind of smarter decision making. And that's often easier said than done, finding ways of making smart decisions. So I wondered if you have any advice or any insight into what your business is doing to make sure that you are making the right decisions at the right time. As Cass said, you're not doing chopping or changing the wrong thing. What is it that you're focusing on to make those right decisions? Vlad, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think again it comes with more automated processes. I believe if you have good automated processes, you can optimize the time for your people to create and to be innovative and to come with solution to you. And then live data reporting is essential nowadays to rely on accurate data when you make your plans and budgets. And then automation plays really a big part in any businesses now. For example, our finance department used to do everything on a spreadsheet or little systems, and now with NetSuite we are bringing all together into one system, and that's already a milestone for us. We succeed to automate a big area of the business. And going forward, we will have automated purchase orders that will save time on our merchandising team, to focus more on their tasks.
Yeah. Do you think that point of saving time is really important?
Yeah,
more time
it is essential, because if you spend a lot of time in retail fashion to do admin work, you neglect other areas, and then time is going and you identify more challenges and risks. But once that you have a good system in place and it does everything for you, easy, you can swap to something to tackle in the day, in the week, and how you plan your time.
Luke?
It's very consistent with what Vlad was saying. We're in a position where we've grown so quickly that we perhaps haven't been able to put the basics in brilliantly. And if you look from finance, for example, establishing a consolidated view of sales revenues across all channels, having clear and readily available information on stock valuation, making payment reconciliation processes more efficient and more streamlined. These aren't necessarily the sexy topics that get everyone excited, but if you nail them, man, they can have a huge impact on the business, because you're actually making decisions from a position of confidence. So yeah, I think our main focus right now is getting some of those basics in brilliantly, rather than in just good enough actually using those as enablers for us to grow more confidently. As I say, we're very fast approaching kind of 9 figures and growing through the 8-figure turnover bracket very, very quickly puts an incredible amount of pressure on the business. It's good pressure, but it means that you have to go very, very quickly at getting the core basics established. So yeah, that's some of the ways in which we're supporting smarter decision making, actually getting data in a shape and in a place where the main decision makers about how much budget have we got to play with in this area know that they can make that decision with a good level of confidence in the numbers that they're looking at.
Yeah. You see, you mentioned some of these things aren't necessarily the sexiest things. Is there ever a challenge to get kind of buy-in from, your founders, your CEO, for the non-sexy things that you have to invest in or you have to put time and effort into? Can that be a challenge?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, you boil it down to like, there is 10 initiatives on the table and you can only choose 5 or 6 of them. If one of them is deeply unsexy to 90% of the people in the room, you have to have a really, really clear business case as to why that needs to take precedent. And again, this goes looping back into culturally, there's got to be a climate where you can talk openly and honestly, and there is enough structure to be able to make decisions in somewhat of a kind of like, a process-oriented way where things are considered not just about, okay, does this turn me on, but actually what's going to be the most impactful for the business. So yeah, it can be a real challenge. I think also, and again, this is very sort of appropriate and relevant in the world of like NetSuite and ERPs. We're all either going through or have gone through NetSuite ERP implementations. Those types of projects take a lot of time and effort. They do not go in overnight. As much as we would all love them to, they don't. They require time and effort. So getting the initial buy-in is one challenge, and then keeping the profile and the focus and the level of motivation directed towards that to get the full return on the investment and the maximum amount of a system like an ERP. Yeah, it requires ongoing kind of management. And sometimes you nail it and other times you perhaps don't nail it. And you kind of got to make sure that you're, brokering that internally. So yeah, it's a real challenge, but something that if you get right, it really helps in terms of getting that maximum amount of an ERP implementation or anything else that you're investing in the back office.
Kath, what are your thoughts on smarter decision making?
Yeah, I think couple of things really. So first of all, we talked about, I think that raised spreadsheets, that a lot of the companies I work with, people spend the vast majority of their time gathering data because that data is in lots of different places and therefore it's actually really difficult to even get hold of the data. So that is not smart decision making. Smart decision making is where all that data resides in a single place. There is no argument about what the right answer is because there is only one source of the truth. And that whole process of getting that data into a state and in a location that helps people make decisions quickly is really important. And you do need to make the decisions. Data's great, but at some point, and Luke talked about, you've just got to have this instinct that this is right. Sometimes you just have to make a call, and maybe the data's not available, and the worst thing to do is not make a decision at all and prevaricate. So I think that is also really important. But at the end of the day, the better quality of data that you've got, the easier it is, because at the end of the day, I think knowledge is power. And putting that power into the hands of the right people is making sure that the right people have got the right data to do their jobs in the most efficient way possible. It's not all about, keeping my data secret from everybody else. It's all about what's best for the business overall.
I guess something that just came to my mind is Luke spoke about people, kind of gut feeling and instinct. How do you kind of balance that off with, we've talked a lot about data, it's been brought up several times. What if your gut is telling you the opposite of what the data is telling you? Do you go with the gut or do you go with the data? How do you reconcile those two? That was an off-topic question. No one was expecting that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wish I had a really elegant response. it's going to be so context specific. I'm trying to think of an example where that's happened recently. In our last leadership huddle, we were talking about a potential collab, and a few in the room had like the gut feel of that collab would be great, and others perhaps wanted to take a little bit more time to chew over it and gather up some data points. I suppose in that sort of scenario, if there is just a clear good case for not doing it and a good case for doing it, you just have to have the maturity to be able to broker a decision. I think like those sorts of things happen, and it's really a reflection of the culture of a leadership team as to, can people agree or disagree agreeably, I think is the phrase, right? Like, okay, it's cool that you don't agree with this, but we're going in that direction. We need you to get behind it. And a strength of a really good team and a good culture is that those people will, and they will throw everything at it, even if they initially didn't believe in it. So it sounds like a bit of a non-answer, but I think it really just boils down to, do you have a good level of trust in each other? And can you, disagree agreeably and get behind whatever the eventual decision is?
Disagree agreeably. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question, we've talked a lot about this idea of growth and finding growth, etc. And a key part of that, I believe, is innovation. And you've got to move forward. And we're seeing a lot of retail businesses doing this in lots of different ways. So some businesses are shifting and becoming kind of marketplaces. There's, as Luke touched on, there's lots of collaboration still going on. There's businesses launching new categories all the time, or expanding into new channels, whether that's, online businesses opening stores, or lots of focus on apps, etc. I wanted to sort of, as we begin to wrap up, talk about maybe some of the ways your businesses are innovating and where they're kind of finding success. Vlad, I know Oliver Bonas did a lot through lockdown. Could you talk us through some of the things that have been successful?
Yeah, we like to follow the trends, and listen to our people, and we are innovating through working now with Oracle NetSuite to complete an instant click and collect in store. We had furniture launch a few months ago, so we are going in following always the trends. What is needed from us, because I think Oliver Bonas come closer to the British culture in the end. We everyone that I'm talking about with say, oh, we love Oliver Bonas. We always want to go there and to buy. And of course, we want to offer the ultimate journey to our customers. We want to give them the best journey possible, and to make them feel closer to us, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. I guess, Oliver Bonas launching furniture, that is like a whole new category. Yeah. Was that, and to sort of, make the call and kind of go for it was probably quite a big decision. What was it that kind of drove that direction? Do you have any advice in that area?
So we had already a lot of products in this category. Household products, accessories for a house, and in the end was, why to not try to launch furniture and to match with our products, because then if a customer sees you have a nice lamp shade, and then you have a nice bedside that match your lamp, it comes with a strategy and how you bring your products together, rather to look to have different products.
Mm-hmm. Great. Luke, what about Represent?
I'm mindful of time. I won't talk about all of the innovation we're doing because it's constant, but you kind of go through the different categories of the business. You look at the product department, garment technology, styles, fabrics. It's constantly innovating with Robin and James and the team. And then you got channels that we're innovating in. D2C is constantly evolving, whether that's the international outreach and expansion, mobile, but also like as vital as our D2C is our wholesale and by proxy, the retail component of the business. We are very much like in physical retail spaces through some of our key strategic wholesale partners. And you only have to look at the recent Selfridges store space. Like we are really innovating in the way we look and the way people can engage with our products inside of these spaces. So these sorts of things are constant. Like that's just a constant force inside of the business. If I think about it closer to my world in technology, we're putting a huge emphasis over the next 6 months on getting much greater visibility and control over stock allocation. And so we have multiple distribution centers. We therefore have multiple channels as well that feed off of those distribution channels. Distribution centers. How do we ensure that we've got visibility of what stock holding we've got and how we want to allocate that between the different channels in as flexible a way as possible so that we can maximize sell through and also ensure that we're protecting the relationships that we want to protect. And then I suppose one other area is, amongst many in the tech, is product lifecycle management. I touched upon it before, but how we take concepts to market and how we take those products and the information that sits around those products and distribute it through the business's systems in the most elegant and efficient way. So yeah, overhauling, or perhaps not overhauling is the wrong phrase, but really fine tuning the different sort of touch points between different teams and the different systems and trying to consolidate that. So people talk about having like a single source of customer data. I think we should be aspiring to a single source of product data that then becomes this like this engine room or nerve center for distributing product data between different systems and channels.
Great advice. Cass, do you have anything to add on that point?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because D2C has actually really shaken up the retail marketplace over the course of, probably really only the last 5 years or so. It's made a massive difference. And I think one observation I've got, if you look at a lot of the D2C brands, is just how innovative they are in terms of creating customer communities. So, offering a place for the customers to come and actually be part of a community, not just buying products off me. So I think, the innovation doesn't have to be in product or in the customer experience. It can be more almost esoteric, I think is possibly the right word, that you actually want to make the customer be part of your community of like-minded souls, if you like. Which sounds a bit deep, but that really is, I think, where some of the D2C brands are going, really doing some really clever stuff to kind of get customers onto the site, not just to shop, but actually to consume content that relates to the products that I'm selling, but actually makes me more of a destination. And obviously the advantage of that is it's great for customer retention. So, customers might not be spending quite so much money right now, but I want to make sure they're absolutely spending as much as possible of their total available money to spend with me. So I think that's really important to innovate at the moment, particularly where, there are issues around customer confidence or consumer confidence generally. I'm also seeing people looking wider afield. I mean, Brexit was, a troubling time for a lot of UK-based businesses and still is. But, a lot of the brands I'm talking to are looking wider and, thinking about EC and EMEA, particularly Eastern, Central Europe, Middle East and Africa are growing really well at the moment, in contrast to sort of more traditional European marketplaces. So it's also thinking not just in terms of channel, but also in terms of, international, that there may be some non-traditional places to look at to really grab some, grab a great market share there. So it's about looking at everything, isn't it? When you talk innovation, it's not just one thing, it's lots and lots of different things. And some of those can be small, tiny changes. And some of those could be massive changes, but it's the incremental effect of constantly trying to innovate and be different and change where it makes sense.
Thank you. Some great advice. So now we're going to go on to some questions from the audience. So again, if anybody has any questions for our panel, do get them in now. Kind of to your point there, Kath, someone has asked the disruption that we're all seeing, disruption to the market seems to be getting more regular and faster to hit. Could this mean that the market is just always going to be disruptive, that we're always going to be in these challenging times?
Who knows? Who knows? I've personally lived through my third recession in a row, although technically I don't think we're quite in a recession yet in the UK, because I think we just managed to scrape out of it with the December trading figures. But the world is a changing place, and it shifts and changes constantly, so that is a given. The economy will at some point improve, and obviously that makes everybody's lives easier. I think what's happening with China could radically change our industry, because so many apparel and homewares businesses do source from China. I think that could be a permanent thing, and I think we do need to keep an eye on the wider picture there. Is it permanent? Yes, in some ways, no, in others, really. I think, there is a cyclical thing, in my view, personally, having lived through a couple before, that you can have these periods of great uncertainty, and then it settles down for a bit, and then there's more great uncertainty. It's just actually a bit unfortunate that we had so many bits of great uncertainty all at the same time, really, with COVID and the Ukraine situation and now the economy, all kind of interlinked with one another.
Mm-hmm. The person has added, if that is the case, what's the advice of the panel in terms of, they've suggested you spread yourself out and you try and cover all bases, or you choose one thing and you focus on it, and they've said you take your customer to your chosen channel that you've done well. So for example, I guess this is that wholesale, D2C, stores, online, like what is your advice? Do you think that you kind of have to have a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, or do you think focusing on what you do best is where we should be focusing?
It's much easier to ride macro geopolitical things that you can't control by being incredibly good at what you do control. So I'm not going to be able to answer the geopolitical question. I don't know. None of us do. But what I do know is, if we continue to create really, really good quality product and put it in front of our very, very clearly understood customer in the places that they want to be consuming this, both in physical and digital spaces, and we do that consistently, that we can sustain our business model through those challenging times. We can be resilient to those external challenges that we can't control. Again, I fear that may be not answering the question, but we have a resilience in our business model that means that we're able to, right now, sort of navigate what are fairly challenging broader conditions. And it's because we've created a revenue-led business. We're not chasing growth because we've taken on a ton of investment and overspent over the last 5-10 years. We've been very, very calculated and patient in this growth, and now we have this formula that we feel that can sort of withstand the external conditions. So yeah, just focus on the things that you can control, and if that means being much closer to your customer, do it.
I think that's where a lot of what we've talked about comes into it as well, the kind of smarter decision making and getting the right data in the right places from the right places can help you make the right decisions of, do you expand into a store, for a new store, for example, or do you focus on what you've been doing currently to continue to grow?
Yeah, and not putting the house on one thing or another is probably a good move. You know what I mean? Like, let's not pile in all guns blazing into this like highly risky maneuver. Let's experiment with it in a lower risk way that's not gonna, we're not betting the house on it. And therefore, if it doesn't work, we can pull back from that and start to focus on the other areas that we know are already working.
Yeah. Somebody has asked if we could try and discuss the topic of supply chain, and specifically if there are any technologies that you are seeing or implementing to make your supply chain operations more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to take that one on?
I'm happy to jump in. Mindful, I don't want to take up all the airwaves. But yeah, no, we're spending a lot of time and investing both money and people's energies into implementing a PLM system inside of Represent at the moment. That is going to take some time because you kind of migrate over to a PLM system through like seasons or collections. So you're kind of forward looking and you're dropping collections in. So the PLM system there is really to start to consolidate from lots of different spreadsheets into a single system that we can use to manage things from concept to market. So ultimately, from the point somebody's got an idea to the point where we're sampling it, to the point where we green light or don't particular styles, this system will help us manage that. Now, the first step is to sort of move our own internal processes into this system. The step, once we've achieved that, is to then start to say, okay, how can this feed and be the trigger for some other processes that happen internally that are integrated to the product development and manufacturing part of the business? So that's the kind of internal facing part. I think the next step after that is to try and get the supply chain more integrated with these systems or processes. Maybe unrealistic to think that our different suppliers would all come and work inside of the system that we use, but it's about how do we reduce the friction so that we can increase that collaboration and there just be fewer and fewer different email threads or systems that people need to log into to try and consolidate around this PLM. So yeah, hopefully that gives a valid answer to the question. And yeah, we're constantly looking for ways to improve that because yeah, the speed and efficiency of our supply chain, going back to some of those questions about, you know, agility, our ability to do in the moment initiatives and spin up new color styles of a popular line or something like that relies upon having a really, really good relationship and a fluid collaboration with your supply partners.
Vlad, I saw you nodding. Do you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, we are on the same path, you know. Now we are changing our processes, we are trying to automate everything, and we are looking into PLM on a later stage, you know, but you need to assess and to build everything together.
Right. Somebody has asked, to your point, Luke, but I guess anyone can answer it. These technologies and these new things, they often come with a level of investment. Do you have any advice for, you know, internally securing that investment or proving it before it's in place?
Yeah, and again, stuck record time. Your operator experience in your operational processes and surfacing where the highest forms of inefficiency are, and then trying to put a number by that, even if it is a rough number as to either hours or money wasted, opportunities lost. It will give you such a great way of articulating, this is the problem. I can show you it visually, and I can also articulate it in some kind of number. And then here is a short list of options that we could consider. And I validated it by talking to 3 or 4 people in my network to get a rough cost as to what would it take to adopt this system? What would it take to implement it? Excuse me. But yeah, I think the key thing is not saying we need system ABC. It's saying we have this specific issue in the business, and we need to resolve this issue through improving the following processes, and then overlaying those processes onto the system that you're suggesting that you adopt, whether it be an ERP, whether it be a PLM, whether it be another acronym that techies throw at you. Like, don't start with the system, start with the process and the thing that you want to optimize, and then build the business case for that change. The system, and I know this is in partnership with Oracle NetSuite, but the system is not the thing. It's changing the processes and optimizing the business. The system just enables it. Start that way, not the other way.
Thank you.
I would add to that actually, Graham, because obviously I work with a lot of retailers going through that same process, and we will we help people build those business cases if they haven't got the skills in-house to do that, because not everybody knows how to build a business case. But I would also say that one of the things we always say to people is that you can't do all of it on day one. So do really think, and we talk about stairway, but the key thing is that you clearly articulate what you can bite off and how you're going to do it in the first phase, and really focus on that, and don't let scope creep happen, because it's too easy. And I see this a lot, that you focus on the system and look, the system can do this, oh, and it can do that, and oh, it can do the other, and suddenly your entire project has changed into a slightly different direction. And that, I don't think that's a good business. I think it's really important to really articulate, really focus on that first phase. How are we going to do it? What are the business processes that are going to be impacted? Measurably, how are we going to prove that that was a success? And only then think about what you do next after that.
Great, thank you, Kath. Now, unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I like to often end these discussions with a kind of summary question. So if we were to sum up everything that we've spoken about today, what is the one piece of advice that you have for our audience in terms of future-proofing your business and finding growth in 2023? Vlad, why didn't you kick us off?
Yeah, I would say listen your people, customers and employees in the same time. Follow the trends, and be present. Always be present. That's important now, and offer quality over quantity, because we are going in a different direction.
Thank you. Luke?
No surprises. Throw as much weight behind understanding and optimizing your operator experience as you do your customer experience.
Thank you. And Kath?
Yeah, and I agree with both Vlad and Luke, what they've said, but I would just add, also think about how you're going to measure it. So KPIs, capturing the relevant KPIs for each part of the business, so you know exactly how you're going to prove that it's been a success, I think is a key to that success happening.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Sadly, that is all we have time for today, but I think that's a good place to leave it. So thank you to Vlad, thank you to Luke and to Kath, and thank you to Oracle NetSuite. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.